Welcome to Zing's Appraisers on Purpose. In this season, we journey through the realm of technology and connect with valuation and data analysis experts who are at the forefront of industry transformation. We dive deep into how technology is redefining asset analysis, identifying trends, and enhancing professional valuation skill sets. Join us as we meet with leading minds to discuss the revolutionary intersection of technology and traditional processes with our host, real estate investor, entrepreneur, and chief appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Well, welcome back. We thank you for joining us. And as we always like to say, this is by far the best place that you could be, especially right now and today. And today's guest will further extend that confident statement I just made. You're going to get a ton of insight, some fascinating perspective, and a little bit of, walk down memory lane. But before we jump in, as we always like, is a simple prompt, a simple reminder, if you will. Make sure to go ahead and not only hit the like button, it makes a big difference, continues to raise these up in the awareness for not only our peers, but many people beyond the industry. And by the end, you will definitely be jam-packed with some knowledge, some ideas, maybe even some actions and takeaways. So feel free to be populating the comments as well. With that, I am really excited to introduce our guest, Vin Vomero. Vin, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I've listened to many of your podcasts, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to chat a little more. And you've got a fascinating background. You've got a lot of firsts. We always love to recognize the firsts of our guests, but let's just jump right in. So, man, were you born this way, or how did your life ever come to intersect the real estate and valuation kind of space?
No, I certainly wasn't born this way. My journey and the journey of Foxy AI has had many twists and turns and pivots, but it all started back in 2009 when I was studying biology at Boston University. Going into my senior year, I planned on staying in Boston for the summer, working an internship at a drug company. And that
people like drugs, Vin. I mean, that's a good call. People love drugs. This is the United States.
And a great friend of mine, Alex Hodera, who's very entrepreneurial. He got into real estate as an agent when he was a freshman. He was opening a brokerage. Yeah, and he asked me to come work for him. And that sounded a lot better than flipping burgers. I thought, at least I'll learn something new, right?
Yes.
And so I get my real estate license and went to work as a rental agent in Boston, and probably the worst rental agent in Boston. I would walk into an apartment and you never know what you're walking into, right? Like the place is a complete mess. And I'd be like, let's just leave. Like, I can't even try to sell you on this. But I fell in love with real estate. And at the end of that summer, I just started a property management company.
Oh, wow.
Another great friend, Jeff Zucker, to go along with the brokerage. So that's how I got into real estate.
Oh, that's amazing. So being exposed to maybe the not so good side of the properties by having to show them all, you recognize there might be a little room for improvement. And so you decide to go start a property management firm.
That's right. And the plan was to sell investment properties, like 2 and 3 family homes, which make up a lot of Boston.
Yes.
To high net worth individuals.
Yes.
And the pitch was, we had the rental brokerage. We've got the management company. You just get your check in the mail at the end of the month. And that worked really well for us. We found some early success, basically, as like young kids. And when I graduated, my parents were like, are going to use this biology degree you just got. And I said, I'm going to ride this out and see where it takes me.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have built huge careers. Property management bolts on to a lot of brokerage businesses very nicely. And then, as you touched on, that opportunity to be managing the properties, obviously an opportunity shows up to provide brokerage or even, your opportunity to own them yourself. So did you guys just crush it and then just sell out and now you just work for fun, or what happened from there with the property management space and the investment brokerage?
Yeah, I mean, we did pretty well. And, a couple of years into that, there was this property that was sitting on the market. I think this was around 2011. And this house had a huge 4-alarm fire in it and nobody would touch it.
Wow.
And we went and looked at the house, and the fire kind of seemed to be contained to one side of the property.
Yes.
And Of course, the house was completely destroyed. There's probably 3 inches of water in the basement. But I thought like this house could be salvaged. And we
Yes.
wound up bringing in a structural engineer, took a look at the property, and he said, yeah, like the bones are pretty good. This one side of the house basically completely needs to be replaced. The roof needs
Sure.
to be replaced. But you don't need to tear this down.
Oh,
And
nice.
that project was a really big success. Our other clients then wanted to buy distressed properties and fix them up for higher returns. So we basically acted as project managers in addition to renting and everything. And we built up a nice group of subcontractors. We renovated about 24 2 to 3 family properties over the next 2 years. And I ended up getting my general contractor's license in Massachusetts as well. And we decided to start investing alongside some of our clients. And we wanted to do that full time. So we closed down the brokerage. We sold off the management company to another group in Boston, and started as real estate developers doing projects in like the 2 to 10 unit range.
Oh, nice.
Some new construction, but mostly renovations. And this was now like 2013.
That's phenomenal. Now, most people don't know, Vin. I know we were joking about it a little earlier, but you guys had a little brush with fame early on with the media. Some people might actually look you up and recognize you like, oh my gosh, that's him from back in the day. Talk a little bit about that, because that was a fun little side project that got you a lot of knowledge along the way.
Sure. I wouldn't say really a brush with fame, but during our time running the management company and the brokerage, we really bootstrapped kind of a reality show called Making Moves.
Yes.
That was just, about the work that we were doing as like young entrepreneurs in Boston, and we wanted to help other entrepreneurs. And that was basically the idea. We traveled like all around the country, and we met people from, all backgrounds, and, tried to use our networks and our experience, what little experience we had, but tried to help them, on their journey. And we made some great friends and relationships, people that we still, talk to today. So that was definitely, a really fun time.
That's fantastic. And was that, you mentioned, entrepreneurs, so it wasn't specifically focused on real estate development and real estate investment?
No, not at all. It was anybody that was, kind of hustling to do their own thing. They didn't have to be an entrepreneur specifically, but there was one person that we had on the show who wanted to play like professional hockey.
Wow.
And we're all big hockey fans. One of my co-founders on the real estate side, Jeff, a huge hockey fan, and had some connections there. And we thought, okay, we could maybe help this person out.
Wow.
So yeah, people from all kinds of backgrounds.
So did you get in the sports agency business at that point? Repping talent?
No, we didn't. We weren't repping them at all. We stuck to real estate.
Got it. So like you said, what a fun thing to do, to travel the whole country, connecting with people. And then you guys, was this like a video series? Was this a podcast? Netflix didn't pick you up back then. I'm sorry to hear, man. Otherwise we'd know all about it today.
It was a video series that, we recorded. We hired a videographer to follow us around, and it was just on YouTube. It was completely, bootstrapped, like self-funded kind of thing.
Yes. So you basically taught Gary Vee everything he knows, is what you're telling me.
I wouldn't say that. I think Gary Vee's been doing it long before, I was doing it.
Not much longer, man. I don't know if you know when he started, but about the time you guys were kicking that around, he was not too far ahead of you, which is pretty impressive. I was referring to the videographer's reference to, tracking every move you guys are making, which was pretty sweet. Wow. So you're there developing, so you sell off the management, you close the brokerage. Now you get into be developing. A lot of people make massive careers out of that. How long did you do that? And how did that go for you guys?
Yeah, we did that from, I guess, 2013 when we closed down the management company and everything, to about 2018 when I started Foxy AI. And fast forward to, I guess, 2015, sort of 2 years into our development career, we had completed a 10-unit new construction project. We were refinancing that project, commercial loan. And the appraiser that comes out, he comes from Western Massachusetts. And this project's in Charlestown, Massachusetts. So right
Give,
outside of downtown Boston.
give people a sense of the distance and the difference in geography.
Between Western Massachusetts and Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about probably, a 2+ hour drive.
Which, nothing wrong with a 2+ hour drive. Talk a little bit about, I've spent a lot of time out there, so I'm intentionally going somewhere with this because it mirrors my own experience. What was the typical environment like where the person was coming from versus where they were arriving to for your new 10-unit building?
Generally speaking, a much more rural environment communities versus, Charlestown, Massachusetts, which is kind of like, one of the 5 boroughs of Boston, if you will.
Absolutely.
Right outside of downtown.
Yeah. No, love Charlestown. Love the, as you refer to it, the boroughs of Boston. It's a wonderful city. A lot, like you said, a lot of great density of long-standing real estate. And, we know a lot of people in the profession do cover large geographies or specialize in particular product types. And therefore they cover, they travel a ton. But what was your experience like?
I'm sorry, what was my experience like in Boston?
Particularly with getting to work with this appraiser who you'd never met before?
Sure. So he comes out to the property and, takes a look at the houses and everything. And, I'm asking him about what he knows about the neighborhood. And he really didn't know too much. And there was this $1 billion development going on about 10 minutes.
Yes.
Walk, a 10-minute walk from this property. New train station going in, mixed use, condos, just the whole works.
Yes.
And so I take him in the car to drive him around there just so that he can learn a little bit
That's very fun.
about the area.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the appraisal comes in a bit lower than expected.
No, that never happens, Vin. That never happens.
Well, we ended up having it reappraised and everything worked out just fine. But this experience sent me down a rabbit hole on other ways of valuing property and AI and computer vision. And this is when I learned that automated valuation models don't account for the condition of the home. Right? They just assume average condition across the board and that there was no way to understand property condition at scale. You just had to manually look at photos or like physically visit the property. And that was the start of the idea for Foxy AI.
About the inability to understand property condition at scale. Yeah, that makes sense. So as is it for so many people, they have an experience, sometimes amazing, sometimes not amazing. And that sets them down a course. As you said, it sent you down the rabbit hole. Did you have any experience around, it sounds like you basically go from developing buildings to developing software. Like that's just an obvious choice. Or is it?
No, I had no experience. I'm a science and tech nerd, but I knew, next to nothing about artificial intelligence at the time.
I see.
And what I did was I set up Google Alerts. Are you familiar with Google Alerts?
I actually am. But for some people who may not be, just a quick, 15, 20-second briefing on it.
Sure. So you can set up a Google Alert for basically any keyword that you want.
Yes.
And Google will send you an email at whatever frequency. It could be every day, with like the top articles that contain those keywords for that day, for example.
Yes.
So I set up Google Alerts for keywords like artificial intelligence and computer vision and machine learning. And I also started a spreadsheet, and every day I would get the alerts and I would read the articles that sounded interesting. And I wrote down every new company I came across and what they did. And when I got to about 200 new companies, I was like, hey, it's getting a little out of hand. But this helped me understand what was possible, what was being done, who was having success, what kind of business models people were using. And there are also lots of research papers from sites like Archive that come up.
Yes.
And I would read those papers. So I gained some technical knowledge as well and learned about what research was being done.
Yes.
And although I couldn't walk the walk and actually write code, I was able to talk the talk. And that technical understanding was what convinced our first machine learning engineer and basically an original co-founder, Frankie Liuzzi, who still works with us today. He said so many people would come to him with these crazy ideas that were simply out of the realm of possibility, but you could tell that I had done my homework And I had an actual understanding of what could and couldn't be done.
Yes.
And that convinced them to build these early models for me.
That's phenomenal. And so what was your original idea? We're going back, almost a decade now.
So yeah, now it's 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And our hypothesis was that we could use computer vision to understand property condition and then use that information to improve the accuracy of an AVM.
Yes.
And in my research, I had stumbled across the quality condition definitions from the UAD.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was a PDF on Bradford Technology's website.
Probably.
And I thought, this is perfect. Like, appraisers had already put together this scale. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Let's just use this. So we gathered photos and labeled data, and the late great Bill King was
Yes.
actually really instrumental here.
Love Bill. What a wonderful man.
He was a great guy, and he was on the original panel of the GSEs that helped put together these definitions.
Mm-hmm.
But the definitions are about a paragraph each, and
Yes.
I think appraisers have a hard time remembering exactly what each definition is.
Yeah.
They're often conflated as well. And we hired Bill to help us really boil the definitions down into 1 to 2 sentences so that they were much easier to remember and understand for the labelers. And Bill ultimately
fantastic.
became a great friend.
Oh, man. That's wonderful. I mean, and Bill was such a thoughtful, caring, and, just generous human being. Definitely lost an amazing person in his passing. And it's wonderful to hear about the contribution that he had to your all's work. What insights did you gain early on from, first coming into the knowing that there was this thing called property descriptions, like what we call them C ratings and Q ratings. Right? So you're coming to this sense of knowing, but as you get that, you start to connect someone like Bill. What were some of your early ahas, especially because you're coming out of a development background?
Sure. I think the biggest learning from that was that these scores were very subjective.
Yes.
And that there was value in making them objective, right? By building a model that was looking at the property photos and coming up with a score, in its own way, essentially, not being influenced by, maybe some outside factors. For example, I remember reading a research paper about the house that an appraiser visits before they come to your house, let's say, can affect how they see your house. So if they go to like a mansion before they come to your house or my house, and they're like, this house is like nowhere near as nice as,
Oh, man.
the mansion that I was at before, that can, have an effect on their opinion. So we built a model to score the condition of the property from the photos on a 1 through 6 scale. And we also built a very, very basic AVM to predict home prices. And then we ran the AVM and we got the Zillow values. And then we waited for the homes to sell to compare values.
Okay. Yes.
And lo and behold, we were able to improve the accuracy of the values. It wasn't by much at the time, but there was enough of a signal there to know that this worked.
And that's fantastic. And I totally get what you're saying, but maybe some other people are not as familiar with the iterative nature of programming and may not be familiar with the reference to like signal versus noise. Can you just take like a minute or two and kind of break that down for maybe some of our less familiar coding folks?
Sure. So basically, we had collected, a large enough of a sample size. Mm-hmm. I think it was about 1,000 properties.
Okay.
And these were just local, in Massachusetts, but a large enough sample size where we would have some confidence in the data and the results that were collected at the end of the day. And, if we felt like if we saw the true improvement in the accuracy of the predicted value on enough of these properties, then there was the condition and quality scores that we were feeding into the model to try and improve the accuracy of the model, right? That was the hypothesis.
Yes.
That they were actually providing a lift and that it wasn't maybe, some other property feature. And so, right, we did a lot of analysis of that data to make sure that, this was actually what was improving the accuracy. And when we looked at that, what we found was that the top 3 property features that most contributed to the value of the home in the AVM was location, of course.
Yes.
square footage,
Yep.
and then the condition of the property.
Yes.
And everything else kind of came after that.
Yes.
And so, that gave us the insight of like, okay, this data is truly improving the accuracy of the valuation and that this is working.
That is phenomenal. So here you are, you have started down this path of being a successful developer. And did you all continue the development of real estate along the path of developing software for a while or completely? Or did you ultimately walk away from that because you're so engrossed in the laptop with coding? Or how did this transition, if there was one, go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this was still a side project at the time while I'm doing real estate development. And, now it's like 2018 and the housing prices in Boston are starting to get a little out of control. The numbers on the deals weren't penciling out for us.
No.
And my wife and I decided to move to New York, which is where we're from originally. And I was going to focus on this full time. And
wow, okay.
The idea for Foxy AI as an API for AI and computer vision models for real estate was born.
That's phenomenal. So because, and you, like so many people did, that frustrating experience of looking at potential investments and you're like, who's buying this? Like, look, I'm willing to buy, but I mean, I'm not going to buy at those prices. I'm like, there's no margin. I'm like, we're going to basically pay our subs and get nothing for it.
Yeah. And when prices started to get higher, we were doing rentals. Okay. A lot of the folks that were buying were doing condo flips. And so I think the numbers made sense for them, but it was just outside of our investment thesis. And we didn't want to get into flipping condos.
Sure.
So
that totally makes sense. What so we have so many people with such deep knowledge and they geek, like me, geek out on investment details and stuff. So given that you all had a focus, what was your thesis around generally staying in the smaller side of the investment and development opportunities?
Well, it allowed us to move really quickly. We set up a really efficient system of, finding, these mostly 3-family properties, going in, getting them renovated.
Yes.
And a lot of them, what we did was many apartments in Boston had a formal dining room.
Yes.
And the folks that we rented to were mostly young professionals, in like the 22 to 30 range, kind of just out of college.
Yeah.
So they didn't need a formal dining room. And we always turned that into a bedroom. And, that was one way that we were able to, really increase the returns on these properties for us. And that was basically the general thesis. We were able to move pretty quickly and do between 4 and 6 multifamilies a year.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Finance those, just kind of recycle the money.
Yes. I mean, that's an impressive way to go. And as you touched on, you didn't change the shell of the property. And it sounds like you maintained the footprint for the most part. I should say the layout. And you converted one of the spaces from a common area to a private area and therefore boosted the rent. Would you all end up doing a full gut remodel on the properties as well? Or was it primarily cosmetic, or what was your approach?
It really depended on the property. I mean, we did everything from new ground up construction to, just some light renovations, repainting and refinishing the floors. But the majority of them were probably more somewhere in the middle, not quite a full gut, but, completely redoing the kitchens and the bathrooms and painting and refinishing the floors, those kinds of renovations.
That's nice. So they would be what it sounds like permit light, or maybe even almost no permits needed in terms of getting in and getting out of these investments.
Yeah, we typically had permits, and that was one reason why I wound up getting my general contractor's license, was so that I could just go pull the permits myself. But we typically, had permits on all of these.
Yeah. No, it's I see in Chicago, that's just a suggestion, it seems like, more than anything else in that 2 to 4 flat space, because so many people are handy and just do it themselves.
We tried to be by the book as we could.
Hey, it's always easier, because there's nothing worse than having a building inspector come by and just ask for a copy of the permit. She's like, what do you mean? And, your client will be there and they're like, well, we just did some painting. He's like, yeah, that's brand new electrical service. Where's the permit? He's like, and then they end up with fines and violation, and sometimes you even have to rip all the work out. So that's phenomenal. Right. So What was the typical footprint? Was it more like a 521 and you turned it into a 531, or were you also adding bathrooms to really boost the utility for your clients, your ultimate renters?
We would add a bathroom when we could. I mean, they were usually, two bedrooms or
Okay.
3 bedrooms that we were turning into, like a 3 or a 4.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. And what type of increase in rental income would you typically see? How big of what was the delta typically by converting the dining room?
Oh, I don't remember off the top of my head, but, I would say at the time, a bedroom in a 3 bedroom or 4 bedroom apartment would be renting for anywhere between $800 a month to say $1,000 a month.
Per bedroom?
Right, per bedroom,
Sure.
depending on the location and
Sure.
kind of the quality of the finishes and everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. I mean, you take that building going in, you're getting, pick a number, you're getting 3,000 a month in rent. And now you're suddenly coming out you're getting 3,000 a unit in rent. You got 2 units, you got 6. Now you add 1,000 each. You're coming out at 8,000. I mean, even for the same going in cap rate, even though it appeals to a totally different buyer. I mean, that's phenomenal work. That's why the value add space is so desirable when people can find them.
Yeah, we really had a nice little niche going for a while.
Yeah. Were you always focused on harvesting the investments, or would it be like, rehab 3, keep 1? There's different references. People have like the Burr method, and people have different fun little acronyms for their approach to investing. How did you all handle it from your investment?
Are you running a real estate firm? Are you looking to grow your firm, streamline your operations, or prepare for an exit? Don't miss this opportunity to work with Michael to figure out your business pathway to massive success. With a growth system for business that leverages opportunities and removes obstacles that Michael has successfully taught to thousands of entrepreneurs globally. Michael's guidance will help turn aspirations into reality. Michael is a renowned figure in the real estate and business coaching worlds. As one of only 5 individuals worldwide for Entrepreneurs Organization, Michael serves a dual role, training business owner participants in the EO Accelerator program, while also upskilling EO members' impact and capacity to lead multi-million-dollar businesses. Get more out of your business. In working with Michael, you can achieve the growth, profitability, and life balance you desire. With Michael, it's not just about business growth. It's about redefining your purpose for business and for your life. If you are interested in working with Michael, contact him via his LinkedIn profile or email him at michaelh@paru.com. And now back to part 2 of the episode, where we explore new technology trends that will shape the world of real estate appraisal for years to come.
The original idea was, I guess, the Burr method, right?
Yeah.
We would just refinance and recycle that cash, and we built up a nice portfolio of properties. And over the years, we've sold many of them. But
Yeah.
the original intention was to, just kind of hold them indefinitely.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it becomes your own 401k plan. It's a wonderful thing. It's indexed for inflation and it provides housing, which people need, which is phenomenal. So you've got that. You're getting priced out of the market in 2018. And I heard you mention that you had a significant other at that point. And so you moved back closer to your roots.
Right. And I had started reaching out to all the AVM companies.
Okay.
And setting up
How did
meetings.
that go?
It didn't go so well.
Yeah, and you're an AVM.
It didn't go so well at first. One problem that we ran into was that they were still using more traditional linear regression models.
I see.
And the data that we wanted to provide at the time really worked much better in a machine learning based AVM,
Yes.
like the basic one that we had built.
Yes.
Also, AI was still really new. You had to do a lot of education,
Yes.
and everyone was quite skeptical.
Oh, yeah.
Some folks were like, "Hey, I've been building AVMs for 30 years. Why do you think you can improve on this?" Which was totally fair. I was brand new. I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know much about AVMs. But we had some data to back it up.
Okay.
And needless to say, they just weren't ready to incorporate this data into the models.
Yes.
So the AVM companies just aren't biting. And I read this PhD research paper on computer-assisted mass appraisal models.
Okay. Do you remember who the author on that article was?
The author was Paul Bedanset.
Yes. I was going to say, I think I read that same. That's the only reason I asked. I'm pretty sure we know we're talking about the same article there. How did that influence you?
Well, I wound up getting on a phone call with Paul, and I sent him an email, I think, and I said, "Hey, I really enjoyed your paper. I've got some questions. Are you open to a phone call sometime?"
Yes.
And he was kind enough to jump on a call with me, and I told him about what we had built and asked him if this would be useful, in the CAMA world. And he said, absolutely. So I start reaching out to the CAMA modeling companies.
Yes.
And through them, we get our first big customer, tax assessing department down in Texas.
Oh, fantastic. So for those people, totally we're in sync, but maybe some people that are newer to the profession or not even in the profession, they're thinking, why is Vin doing artificial intelligence on camels? Like they just don't understand the connection. And you're not talking about camels, you're talking about CAMA. Tell people what CAMA is.
Yeah, so it stands for Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal Model.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to an automated valuation model, but is used for, property tax assessing and versus, trying to assess one single property.
Exactly. Mass appraisal, another way they like to say it.
Right.
Got it. So you're reaching out after you read the paper, you're even more informed. You're like, hey, this CAMA space looks pretty interesting. You land a client in Texas. So what happens?
Yeah, this project was a huge success. We scored the quality of the homes in their county. It was over 160,000 properties.
Wow.
Using our models that we fine-tuned our models, for their use case and for their county, essentially. And we saved them over $1 million in labor. It was like 36,000 hours of manual.
They gave you a third of that. Those property tax attorneys take like a third of savings. You guys aren't attorneys, of course, but that's pretty sweet. Saving over $1 million.
Yeah, this was our first, project and with this use case. So we definitely undercharged them, I think.
You always undercharge generally in the beginning, and then you just build it up from there.
Right. And this was like mid to end of 2019.
Got it.
And in hindsight, we know what's coming next, right? COVID, right around the corner.
But we didn't know that at the time. You guys were I can't imagine you weren't going to every IAAO meeting that you could just to land new clients.
Well, I would have, but COVID comes around. The IAAO meetings, of course, are canceled.
Yes.
But at the time, I'm on top of the world right now. My wife and I we just had our first daughter in February of 2020.
Yes.
We had the tax assessing project that was a huge success. We're still a completely bootstrapped company. And I put together a plan to go after this niche of the property tax market.
Yes.
I'm feeling invincible at this point.
Yes.
And then just a few weeks after the baby's born, everything starts shutting down. And the tax departments that I'm talking to are like, hey, we're not spending right now. Come back to us in 2021. Come back to us in 2022.
Oh, goodness.
And fortunately, today we work with folks all across real estate, from tax departments to AVM providers and appraisers. But there were some really tough weeks in there and trying to figure out what I was going to do with the company, because we certainly couldn't wait a year plus for something to happen. So in true entrepreneur fashion, I said, we'll pivot.
Yeah.
And this was when my co-founder, Dan Hurwitz, joined the team. We had known each other for about 12 years from my time in Boston.
Yes.
He started his career in insurance and had tried to sell me my real estate partner's insurance.
Okay.
And we didn't buy it, but we found out that we actually had some mutual friends in common, and we wound up staying in touch. And then 12 years later, we ended up working together.
Oh, that's amazing. And how was it that he came to be a part of this new opportunity that you all were growing and done a lot of research on and brought in, technology support?
So after his time in insurance, Dan spent some time in the venture capital world, and he knew about this idea, Foxy AI, and he was staying in touch, with me, and I was keeping him informed of what we were doing. And it was way too early for any kind of venture, funding. He eventually leaves the VC world. He starts his own insurtech company, which eventually is acquired by another group. And right after that, essentially, he was thinking about what his next move was going to be, and I convinced him to come join me.
That's fantastic. So you get somebody with a lot of not only capital raising experience, but also, exposure to multiple markets, lots of different business models, lots of different investors, as well as developers, creators, and you get to land that type of talent on your team. Congratulations.
Exactly. I mean, Dan's a wealth of knowledge, and like you said, he had experience from fundraising. He had experience, building a successful startup. So it was a huge opportunity, to bring him onto the team. And so this is now the early, still like the early months of COVID. And
yes,
what we decided to do is pivot to a consumer facing product called Remodel It.
Oh, okay.
And Remodel It was a browser extension that sat on Zillow's website. And the idea was to use like the quality and the condition models that we had built. And we were going to build some more models to assess the quality and the condition of kitchens and bathrooms and give people ballpark renovation estimates while they were like home shopping.
Yes.
I would give them inspiration on what that future kitchen or bathroom could look like. We built models for that as well. And then connect them with contractors to ultimately have that work done. And for about 8 to 10 months, we built this tool. We had a little traction, but really not enough to fundraise off of, at least not at that time, in the middle of COVID.
Man, but where was HGTV and Flip This House when you needed it most? I mean, you, oh my gosh, you guys were just a little bit, or you were like Google glasses. I mean, it was good, just a little bit early.
Right. We were a little early. Definitely a theme here. But, the value in building Remodel It was really that we just, kept pushing forward, kept building new computer vision and AI models, and we kept advancing our technology. And then in the winter of 2021, one of the companies we had talked to in the past, this was a property preservation company, came back to us and they said, hey, we tried to build these models ourselves. They're not accurate. They aren't fast. Could you take a stab at it? And this was a big 6-figure contract, and we didn't have the manpower to do both model it and build all these new models for them. So we basically pivoted back to the original Foxy AI idea of an API of computer vision models for real estate. And then from there, things snowballed into appraisal, and everyone started building machine learning based AVM. So all of that started to come back around eventually as well.
That makes a ton of sense. And for people that don't know much about the property preservation space, what was it that company was doing that they would benefit from your advancements in computer vision models?
Sure. So the property preservation companies, they manage distressed assets for the banks. And these properties can be anywhere from just 45 days delinquent on a loan payment, and they might send an inspector out to the property to do an occupancy inspection. So, did you stop paying your mortgage and vacate the property, or, are you still living there? And maybe you just forgot to send the check out that month, right?
Sure.
But the bank, the lender, they need some eyes on the property, and they will keep eyes on that property either, until you're current with your loan, or, if the property ultimately becomes vacated and it goes into foreclosure or some other means of selling that property. And it's a very manual process. And each one of these different types of inspections that they do has certain photo requirements.
Yes.
Just, for example, when somebody goes out to do an occupancy check, they need to verify that they went to the right address.
True.
You can do that, with like geotagging and things as well. Yeah. But they do require photo documentation, and then they have to take a photo of the house number and the street sign and the front of the house.
Yes.
And so some of these companies are doing 100,000+ inspections a month. We're talking about tens of millions of photos a month that are being manually reviewed by a QC team.
Yes.
And so we come in with our models to help automate aspects of that manual review process. So we will validate that, the house number photo is there, the street sign photo is there, the front of the house photo is there, and help those folks move through their QC process more quickly. And in some cases, even automate pushing those reviews through QC.
That's phenomenal. So you have literally brought machine power to a previous manual process. And, you being a data guy, how are the stats? Like, if we want to think about, recently there was the Final Four and, opening day in baseball and all that other good stuff that's happening, in 2024 in the first part of the year. It's all about the numbers, like one team against the other. So it's your original thesis against manual reviewers. Was it even a competition?
It really, it's a joint effort. Let's say that. So we're saving them.
Joint effort. All right, we'll go down the joint effort. Like, we both win. The game ended in a tie.
We're saving them about 50% of the time in their QC review.
Yeah.
So, we're not coming in and fully automating the process. There's still, other things that need to be reviewed, along with the photos.
Yes, of course.
And look, AI is not perfect. It makes mistakes just like people do. Yeah. But, 50% savings in time across, let's say 100,000 inspections a month.
Oh, yeah.
Thousands of photos is an enormous savings for them. Both from a time and labor cost. So it was a huge win.
That is phenomenal. And in the iterative process that machine learning is, where it continues to learn from itself and you continue to tweak models as you go forward, if you would, just at a high level, for those people that don't understand as clearly as others do, like, what literally happens? Like, somebody goes out and sees a property, they gather visual information. Then what happens?
Well, in the beginning, it's all a very manual process even when we have to first build these models, right? Like, we're going to build a model to detect the street signs, for example. We've got to collect lots of photos of street signs.
Street signs, yes.
And the data from most companies is not labeled or organized in any way, right? It's just like image 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right.
It's raw images.
And so, we had to sift through, tens of thousands of photos to find, let's say a couple thousand examples of street sign photos.
Yes.
And then you have to take those and have them annotated. And depending on what type of model you're building. So if it's a classification model, you can just throw all those photos, into like a folder, let's say, and say, these are all street sign class photos.
Yes.
You want to build an object detection model where you might see like a little bounding box around the street sign, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Not only do you have to have all of those photos sort of organized into a folder, but then you have to use some labeling software to have somebody go in and physically, draw a bounding box around the street sign.
Yes.
And then when you go to train the object detection model, basically anything that's inside the box, it learns is the street sign. Anything that's outside the box is not the street sign, right? It's irrelevant.
Yes.
And over thousands of photos and iterations of training, you eventually build a model that's able to look at not only photos of street signs, but photos of things that are not street signs and say, this photo is not a street sign. This photo contains a street sign. And here is, a box where the model thinks the street sign is located within that photo.
Fascinating. Love it. Cool stuff. And so because you're able to support the QC team with this object classification, detection, and recognition, what does that ultimately provide for them?
It provides them a much better and much faster QC review process. So instead of having to manually go through sometimes 1,000 photos that are taken at, let's say like a first time vacancy inspection, instead of having to go through all these photos to find the required photos, let's say, the house number and the street sign, that's already been done for them. And those boxes are essentially pre-checked off, and they just have to do, a quick like verification as they scroll through their QC process. They see that those photos were taken, they're put in the right spots, and those boxes were checked off, and they can just continue on to the next section of, the inspection. They don't have to go into that bucket of 1,000 photos to try and find, the house number photo.
So what I think I hear you saying then is through the use of the technology that you all had developed at that point in time for clients, it literally allows their team members to focus on higher value tasks.
That's exactly right. There are much more higher ROI tasks that they can be spending their time on than just, looking for house numbers and street signs. And in the property preservation world, a lot of that is identifying damages that are at a property that need to be repaired.
Yeah.
That's where they make, a lot of their money.
Yes.
And certainly some damages like water damage, you want to catch that early. You don't want to let that go because it could turn into mold, for example, and become an even bigger problem.
Absolutely. And suddenly that asset value drops like a rock.
That's exactly right. And so, we started out with some of these basic or more basic things like house numbers and street signs. And then the model library essentially grew into detecting, all kinds of different damages at these properties for that exact purpose.
Amazing. So out of this first opportunity from a past prospect that reaches back out and says, we need help, you're in the property preservation space. So did you stay in that space, or did you go out and build on related industry opportunities?
We did stay in that space for a little while and, built up a nice little book of business there. And that opportunity, allowed us to actually go back out and fundraise successfully and, raise a seed round. Thank you.
Yeah.
But, we also knew that there were many, many other use cases, for not only the models that we were building in the property preservation world, but again, the quality and the condition models that we had built earlier. We knew at some point, I think, the ABM companies would come around. And we also knew that there were going to be a number of use cases in the appraisal space too. So we didn't stay in the property preservation world for long. We pretty quickly expanded to, other verticals within real estate.
Got it. So which ones did you expand to first?
Appraisal was the next one.
Really?
And it was. And I didn't come from the appraisal world, of course. So at the time, I didn't know a lot about it outside of my experiences and really the quality and condition definitions from the UAD.
Got it.
And I was very fortunate to have met people like Bill King, early on, and to past guests, Luke from Proxy Picks and
Sure.
Nick Conte-Duca, who was at Value Centric at the time,
Yes.
which was later acquired by Opteon.
Yes.
They were all very early supporters and adopters of AI, and they were really instrumental in teaching us a lot of what we know about appraisals and the industry today. So I was very fortunate to have met them.
Oh, that's amazing. And so you meet them. How'd that early learning go, and what did that result in for you guys?
Well, it resulted in AI being used throughout the entire process. They really taught us, the different steps of the appraisal with a data collection and, writing the appraisal and
Yes.
the appraisal QC that goes on as well. And we wound up being able to apply existing models that we already had, and we worked with them to build new models as well. But it all starts on the front end with the data collection process. Somebody's out in the field, just like in property preservation, and they're taking photos. And we use computer vision to automatically label those photos. We validate that the required photos were taken, and we extract property level features. So for example, the computer vision models detect if there are stainless steel appliances in the kitchen or if there's a pool in the backyard. The models detect materials like carpet or hardwood floors, and also identify and highlight possible damages or repairs that might be needed to ensure that they're addressed by the appraiser in the report. And then all of that data is used to pre-fill out forms and check off boxes that were manually checked before. And that's just really like a critical step to getting better and more consistent, ground truth data. out of the appraisals.
Well, it totally makes sense. Like you said, having that type of learning in place to streamline the process, literally check boxes that were going to be happening and do it through a process that has a very high validity and consistency. And through that process, just begs the question, at that point, you're still using still photos. Is that the ideal approach, or does it ultimately move towards your like home movie where it's like, hey, upload, 10 minutes of your home walkthrough and then suddenly Fox the AI comes out with like, hey, ta-da, here's your build sheet.
It really depends on the use case. The majority of what we see today is still imagery. All of our models, they can process videos, 360 imagery, LiDAR data. Mm-hmm. And depending on how fast you want some of these results, right? Like if we have to process a video, which is a much larger file versus, a photo, that will dictate, maybe if you want somebody taking a video versus if you want somebody taking photos, and when you need that data. If you want somebody to get it like directly, when they're in the field to validate certain information that we're extracting out of the photos, you want a faster return time than maybe uploading something like a video. That being said, we're moving more towards on-device models and like real-time object detection as well. So that's certainly something that you could probably see, in the future in some of the new, appraisal, data collection apps and things that are out there.
Man, that is amazing. Almost like sci-fi kind of thing. People thinking of the Jetsons coming into us right now. And Vin, you're the one in the driver's seat helping make that happen.
Well, there's certainly a lot of research and development that goes on. And, it takes a while for some of these technologies to be adopted. I think we're still in the very early stages. I think we're just scratching the surface of what can be done. Yeah. But I think there's going to be a lot of really exciting technologies that come out in the future that are really going to be geared towards helping the appraiser become more efficient and more accurate and more consistent.
Man, that's amazing. Vin, given everything you've seen, everything you've experienced, you came into the profession with, as they would say, boots on the ground, learning, school hard knocks, blood, sweat, and tears even from being in and out of the properties, literally from the ground up. As you look out over the next even just short horizon of 3 to 5 years, what are you most hopeful for or excited about?
Well, from the AI perspective, I think generative AI is going to play a more important role in a number of ways. We can use generative AI, and people are using it today. Like they're going and using ChatGPT to help the appraiser, write comments or something, yes, right? Or make adjustments, which I don't think is the best use of ChatGPT because yes, it's a general model. And really when we're talking about using these models, they should be, fine tuned and trained on like a real estate or appraisal specific data. But we can use generative AI to help write supporting narratives, right? For example, we can ask the AI to explain why this house is like a C3 and a Q4, but it needs to be done in a way where we actually train the large language models, something similar to ChatGPT, yes, directly on the quality and the condition score definitions from the UAD, or, directly on the unacceptable appraisal practices guidelines from Fannie and Freddie to help make sure that what's being generated stays within those guidelines and definitions, and we're not like going off the rails.
Man, that what a world of difference that can have in terms of getting into that deeper support and explanation as opposed to just stating something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to be just a really important piece of the puzzle coming down the road, is really using some of these technologies to help create more transparency in the process.
Well, that's a big one. Using technology to have more transparency. Ultimately, as data transparency increases, it becomes, look at the stock market and, where that literally came from, and the idea of paper stock certificates and trading literal certificates with signatures on it, to creating an exchange, to creating an electronic exchange, to you look at the literally billions and trillions of dollars that move because of the transparency. Absolutely phenomenal. So when is Fox CAA coming out with their own stock exchange?
No, I don't think we're going to be going down that road. We want to stay focused on what we do best, which is building, AI and computer vision models for real estate.
Love that. Absolutely. Well, Vin, we are so excited that you joined us in this session, and we definitely look forward to a follow-up conversation and a bonus session. But man, this is so much to take in for so many people, and you've accomplished, again, so much in such a short amount of time. It is fascinating, and we're really grateful to hear your perspective.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Would love to come back and talk some more, because, again, I think we're really just scratching the surface here, and there's going to be, a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, we completely agree. And you probably agree as well. So definitely light up the comments. Make sure not only to like this podcast, subscribe on either Spotify or YouTube. And more importantly, a few people are probably coming to mind, maybe because we mentioned their name, or maybe because you're like, ooh, so-and-so should listen to this, should know this. They were asking me about this. This is a great step in the right direction. And you don't have to go read those PhD papers like Vin already did, because he just gave you the summary already. And with that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. Again, thanks so much for contributing to Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose being so valuable and so impactful in the industry. Vin, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for joining us in uncovering how technology is reshaping the landscape of real estate valuation and appraisal. Would you do a favor for someone you may never meet to influence a future that is worth building? Please scroll down and like this podcast and share your comments. Stay engaged with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platforms to catch every moment of innovation and expertise shared. Got an idea or a suggestion? Share your thoughts and questions with us. Let's continue to grow together, embracing the tech evolution that is enhancing our industry's effectiveness and efficiency. Until next time, remember, in the fast-evolving world of real estate and technology, being a part of the change is what sets you apart. Keep creating the future by striving for excellence and innovation.